Court Club guys and gals, we are at December, the middle of December, the 19th, and we're ready to get on with it. Christmas, New Year's, all kinds of New Year's resolutions. Hey, listen, guys, gals, if you have not connected with us in 2018 regarding retrieve and review, put it on your to-do list. Let us see your work. Let's have some dialogue with you. It's something we really look forward to, and it's an important part of Court Club. So thanks for being in the family. We wish you the best. And we're going to have some great plays with our guest commentator. We don't do this very often with James Breeding. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob. And Rob and James are going to crank through a recent game that you're going to really love.
Yeah, members. So we're here with James Breeding in December. And coming off two games this weekend, we have the Kansas-Villanova. And then we have the Rhode Island and West Virginia game. So we're going to show these to you. And we're going to start with some real basic fundamentals, and I want to bring that up for James here. And James, just as we look at this first play, and we'll see it here, we're getting ready to start Kansas and Villanova here from Saturday afternoon. Just take us through the importance of starting the game with quality fundamentals, and maybe something or a point or two that maybe you did in the pregame to kind of get on the same page. That we had a very experienced crew in this game, but still the importance of having that meaningful pregame discussion.
Yep. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, you mentioned when we were talking about this, just the importance of the pregame and getting the game off to a good start. So, I don't think that, when I'm with guys who I'm very familiar with, I work with a lot, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about rotations and who's going to call what, but we will spend a lot of time talking about play scenarios that are happening frequently throughout the country, recent rule interpretations, and then we'll talk about, the way these teams play. So, if we know we've got a team who has a large percentage of three-point shots, we'll talk about protecting three-point shooters, lead assisting to pick that up in transition. If the team has a lot of post players, we'll talk about, how are we going to referee the post on the, the back downs and plays like that. And, we don't ever want to go in with a preconceived notion of a particular player. We want to referee, with the clean slate of what they give us on a given night. But it would be it'd be foolish not to talk about the way the teams played. And then I think you talk about how you start the game. One of the things I always personally like to do when the game starts, you got a little butterflies going. I'll kind of self-talk myself through the first possession. Referee the defense, call the obvious, stay in my primary. Because I want my first whistle to be a whistle that shows both coaches, both teams, and all the fans that, hey, we're off to a good start. I've got this play right. So I try to avoid marginal contact, marginal travels, off-ball plays that don't have any effect on a play to start a game. When I blow my first foul of the game, I want it to be where nobody gets up and everybody just kind of nods their head. I think it just kind of validates, what you're doing to the coaches and gets you off to a good start.
Okay, and let's look at this play. And what struck me as I watched was just the fundamentals. And members, we talk a lot about retrieve and review. And this is really part of that retrieve and review process. You should be wearing out the pause button. We've said it many times in Court Club. And this is an example here as we get into the front court. And let's just talk about initial starting positions here, James, if you would. And I think the crew does a nice job just, setting the tone right out of the first possession.
Yeah, it seems like a simple thing, but if you start out and you've got a center at free throw line extended, and you've got a lead who's in a good spot, and trail, they want us working down towards the 28-foot mark to be able to have a good triangle and have all the players between us. And from there, I make a mistake later. We'll talk about the importance of getting ball side. I don't think we can stress enough that when that ball swings, we want the lead to rotate quickly, find a reason to rotate. Sounds like a cliche, but it's really true. And if you start out there, you put yourself in a good position, you got a better chance of getting your first play right.
Oh.
Yeah, we see as that play goes through and completes, James, just real good fundamentals, 28-foot or inside the 28-foot from the trail, free throw line extended from the center slot official, and the 3-foot posted up line for the lead. So really good fundamentals there.
And I would just add that, that right there, that sequence is a very typical where you've got a high ball screen and then you end up with a play in a low block. And we've talked in court clubs so much about that we have to know how to referee the ball screens. And right off the top, we have one just as this play this sequence starts on opening tip.
All right, James, let's get back into some fundamentals here, and we'll take a look at the pass crash play that we called, and we'll share this one here. So we have this play, and again, we are here in the first half of Villanova, Kansas, and let's just run us through this. And again, it's about positioning and really make this play look easy. Just take us through the thought process here.
The play is actually a little tougher when I reviewed it than I thought it was during the game. I guess, first of all, my first key here is on the drive, finding the secondary defender, refereeing him from feet up to get him out of the RA, which we do. What's hard, though, is, that offensive player alights from, 13 feet away, travels a long distance in the air, and then crashes into him. So, my first decision is, do we have a to and through contact, or do we have a player who's flopped? It's clearly not a flop. So then decision two is that player in a legal guarding position as a secondary defender before the offensive player alights? And it's really close. So in my opinion, to steal a Ned Rush cliche, the elephant is the guy getting run over. The ant is that he may have been a little bit late if we broke this down frame by frame of being in position prior to the offensive player alighting from the ground. But, in the end, he pretty good position, firms up, takes it right in the chest. And I think the more obvious foul is an offensive foul.
And
Well,
remember,
sorry, Rob. We have to remember that the offensive player, this is correctly called because the offensive player is out of control. And the offensive player has a responsibility. James looks up through that secondary defender and he can see the offensive player coming. He feels him out of control. The guy's out of control. That trumps maybe a little bit of movement or not. That is the elephant.
yeah, and members, again, use that example, pregame discussions, pass crash plays, important to stay fundamentally sound. Know what your responsibility is, as James alluded to, and really, it's a play that we can make harder than it is by getting out of our fundamentals. So, James, staying with block charge, let's look at you had an already blocking foul here, and we're going to pull that one up so you can see it. And another play where important to go through some of the fundamentals and discipline with your eyes on plays like this. So kind of take us through as we roll it and put us in the lead position here.
Yeah. I think the first thing on this play, not even talking as much about the RA, is plays at the end of the half and end of the game. I think you've got to know or have an idea where the ball is going, and you've got to get yourself in position to referee that play at the end of the half or the end of the game. So here I'm starting out, at lead opposite, and I see where this ball is going to go. So I actually run over and rotate before my trail comes into the front court, which I wouldn't normally do. But I've gotten burned on this play before at the end of a game where I stayed opposite and refereed this play across the lane, and I've actually missed a play in an end of the game. So I'm really cognizant now when the ball's inbounded, going the length of the floor more than with 10 seconds or less on the clock, and I know that play's coming to me, I will get ball side regardless of whether the rotation would normally call for me to or not. I think it helps me here because I get over there and now I can referee the secondary defender from a much better angle than if I'm looking at his back. And from there, it's just a matter of knowing the offensive player is coming, refereeing this guy from the feet up, which he's, this is a pretty easy RA play, to be honest with you. He's, 4 or 5 inches inside, both feet in. But I think the whole key to this play is to get ball side and, then pick up the secondary guy versus I think it's a very difficult play to referee across the lane. I think it's a pretty easy play if you get into position strong side and pick him up.
Yeah, I would agree. And members, I think hear James on that. This is not a there's no magic spot on the floor, as George Tolliver once said many years ago on a court club call. And I think the important thing is here that this isn't something that James would recommend doing in a traditional front court set, but this was time, score, end of half, dictating where he goes to get an open look. So I think that's a very important takeaway there.
Yeah, the time takes a lot of the variations of this play out. You know, in a normal half court set, you know, he could jump stop and kick to the corner. He might pass to a cutting guy on the opposite wing. But, you know, when you're inbounding under 6 seconds on the length of the floor, those options are off the table. He's got to go to the rack. And I need to be in the best position possible to see the secondary defender when he gets there.
James, let's look at the in somewhat of a transition here. Let's look at dead ball positioning. I think this was a really good example of you as the non-calling official. So let's talk through some of the fundamentals of what happens when the whistle blows on plays like this, relatively easy play, and then your responsibilities as the non-calling official.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this play, trying to remember exactly how we went through this. So first of all, I think the tone of the game has a lot to do with how I address this situation. We've had 11 fouls less than 5 minutes into the game. We've got very tenuous behavior between the two teams. And, you know, there are times where you can talk to guys and you can warn guys. And then there's tone of the game where you're not going to do that. And to me, we have a better opportunity here early in the game before we're putting a fourth or a fifth foul on two guys with a double technical foul to set a tone with two guys who are equally in the wrong. One guy bumps the other guy, the other guy kind of grabs his arm, and then we turn and we've got, you know, some comments that are less than positive back and forth between the two guys. So, you know, in my mind here, my options are get between them, tell them to knock it off. You know, and if our fouls were 2-1 and we had nothing going on in the game, you know, that might be an option I'd have. In this game, that's not an option I want to take. I want to use this as an opportunity without penalizing one team more so than the other to say that this interaction and future unsporting acts are going to be penalized to the fullest extent. And, you know, I think just from the live ball, dead ball, to comment on that a little bit, this is where we get into trouble as we let our guard down or we become relaxed on dead balls because the ball is dead, whereas it should be just the opposite. I think, you know, I think it was Mark Wonderlich told me a long time ago that, you know, everybody referees their 1/3 equally when the ball's alive. You become a crew chief when the ball's dead. So I've always tried to think about that and say, okay, when the ball's dead is when really screwed up things happen. That's when I want to be my most attentive.
Yeah, and the thing I noticed here, as you're walking, you walk towards the middle of the paint, which is nice because it puts you right in between all of the players, and also your head position here. If you look, you're not turning away from the players. You're looking right at them, and you're walking right through the middle of the paint. And really what happens is because of your presence, you were able to kind of de-escalate the situation pretty quickly and administer the technical fouls.
Yeah, if you can get in there, and like I'm signaling 1-and-1 there, the sooner you can get them lined up and taking care of the business of shooting free throws, the better off you are because it keeps things like this from happening. But, you know, you get into these huddles, you know, there's certain scenarios on dead balls that lend themselves to conflict. Crossing during timeouts, one team in a huddle, guys on the floor, you know, those are the situations where usually things are going to occur that we don't want.
Really good. And staying with positioning, we talk a lot about the fundamental of engaged matchups, competitive matchups, the responsibility when we have a competitive matchup, and then really our responsibility as it changes when we have a non-competitive matchup in our primary. Where do we go next? And I think this example here really illustrated well your ability to recognize a non-competitive matchup and then get to the next action area. So if you could talk us through that fundamental here from the trail.
Yep. we've got really good position here, and my lead goes over, which I like, and then the ball swings quickly, so he's going to come right back over, but he's not there yet. So I've got the responsibility of the post player still on my side, but I've got a really non-competitive matchup at the three-point line. There's no reason for me to be staring at the Villanova defender on ball as it comes over, because there's plenty of space in between them. But the post action, my lead is refereeing this from behind and probably doesn't have a good look at whether 44 is posting legally and 15 swims him, or whether 44 is holding him off, and then we've got a different situation. So I think that the thing that helps me on this play is that I stayed even through the rotation. He starts coming. You stay at free throw line extended. You find where your action area is going to be, and you work from there versus just staring at two guys who aren't doing anything with 3 feet between them.
Great.
We're going to transition here, staying with positioning. We're going to transition to we have an offensive basket interference play.
Okay. All right, good.
So, James, in this play here, just talk through the fundamental of staying engaged, plays at the rim. Obviously, at this level, you're going to have a lot of plays above the rim.
Yeah, I think that basket interference, the ball coming off the glass and whether a guy takes it to the glass or off the glass, are some of those and out of bounds plays to me are the hardest plays we have. I think most of our plays, if we do a good job getting position and refereeing the defense, we get a really good opportunity to get plays right. Sometimes these basket interference and out of bounds plays, it doesn't matter how good a position you're in, they're really, really hard. So, first of all, when I start refereeing rebounding, I'm going to try to referee the guys who can hurt me on a rebound. I'm going to try to find their arms and know that if, I've got two guys in the paint, their arms are up in the air and they're jumping for the ball, they're in an equally advantageous position. There's less chance of a foul or a push in the back if they're all arms above their heads going to get the ball. So then from there, I'm going to referee my way up and see what are they doing once they get above the rim. I know there's a lot, I remember being taught that, if the position of the hands taking the ball forward, it was probably out and it's probably legal. If they're going straight down, it's probably in. I'll be honest with you, I'm not that good. I'd really just try to find the players in the paint that can hurt me, referee where their hands and arms are, then go to the ball on the rim, and then you've got to make the decision. I will tell you, if they're that close under the goal and they jump up, it seems to me from looking at a lot of tape that there's a pretty good chance that that ball could be up and around the rim. If they're coming in from a distance, you got a better chance of that ball coming off of the rim, but that's not a hard, fast rule. And I think one of the keys on this is you just can't bail out. You've got to stay in that free throw line extended position at C. You probably got to get a step below at the 28-foot mark at trail. And, Doug does a great job. He helps with this play at lead. He's in a wide enough position that he can see it. And he's got a good look too. We usually stay off this play. I personally don't usually call this from lead, but at the same time, if you got a good look, he had one later in the game in transition where he took a flick off the glass that I don't think anybody else could have gotten. So like you said, there's no magic spot. Referee the rebounders from the feet up and, find the ball on the rim.
Yeah, as a good guideline there from the lead, I think as you kind of alluded to, fundamentally we want to trust the center and trail with the first look. The plays elite can really help one are the ones up through the net, which which are really difficult plays, and I've seen those more than a few times already this year, and they're very challenging. And I think that's the one that the lead can really assist on. But overall, good job here by the crew and. Correct call. Now we talked about you talked about out of bounds plays being challenging, and we have one here on a boundary line decision. And a couple things here that I'd like you to talk about, if you would. Number one is our tendency to, because this play comes off a free throw. I think a lot of times personally, and talking to other members, these are times where you could fall into a lull almost and lose your concentration. You have to really stay engaged. So number one, that part of this, and then you have a tough out of bounds play, but also I think you do a good job because you have bodies on the floor. You have what I would consider incidental contact, and you do a really good job of processing this entire sequence. So just talk through that, knowing that you always have out of bounds as your last option.
Right. I guess just kind of taking it through the free throw sequence. For me, I start the free throw sequence by making sure I'm never closer than that 3-foot posted up mark. I think when we get down there, we close our angle. That's the worst thing you can do, is to be on that lane line, because I want to be able to see the guys in the second lane space. If you think about it, the guys in the first lane space aren't going to hurt you. Other than maybe violating, they're not going to hurt you. I think more and more we have guys in the second lane space who want to use their legs and their lower body to drive guys under and then reach up legally and grab the ball. So my free throw process is, first of all, refereeing those second lane space rebounders from a position outside the 3-foot posted up mark. And then from there, when that ball gets loose, you have to avoid the natural reaction to move towards it and to bounce around and, go into lean down umpire mode, as I call it. If you can stay wide and keep a bigger perspective or a wider perspective of it, and then let them dictate where that ball is going to go, I think you've got a better chance than if you try to get right in the middle of them, which sometimes your instincts is to go towards the ball. I try to stay away from the ball to be able to see better other guys flying in. Like in this case, the Villanova kid actually comes down from one of the outside lane spaces and shoots in and knocks this ball out of bounds. And, I'm fortunately in a pretty decent spot to see that.
Yeah, this next play we're going to show, it's really a sequence of 2 plays. And these sequences happen a lot in our games, and I think it's important to know when they occur in your games and be aware. It's total game awareness that we often talk about. So take us through as we watch this sequence of plays and decisions at the rim, one at each end, and kind of go through as a crew and put yourself in the lead on both of these plays or other positions if you would.
Yeah, this is a great learning play of how not to referee the lead position, to be honest with you. I should rotate right here. I shouldn't be hesitating. And for somebody who usually over-rotates, that's a cardinal sin. But I get put at a disadvantage because I don't rotate. And then we have the jump shot. We've got a legal rebound. But now I'm in the worst possible position, which is a closed down, closed angle position to referee when he spins into the lane. And I'm still stuck right there on the end in the lane line. And instead of being able to referee through that play, I'm looking at the back of number 1 right here with a terrible, terrible closed look. So in this play, I don't know, is 21 fading away from the basket in his shot attempt of his own volition, or is 1 walking him away, because I've put myself in a closed look, starting off by not having a good rotation. And, we don't take a foul on this play. Is it a blatant, obvious foul? Probably not. Is it a foul that if I had it to do over again, I'd take? I probably would. I do think the contact moving forward by 1 takes him off of his shot enough that causes it to be short. And then we follow it up coming this way. This is where, thankfully, Mike at lead has the wherewithal to know we've passed on a play on the other end. And now we've got 4 who's a retreating defender, and you can argue whether he gets legal here or not prior to contact. I think that you could take a foul on both ends and be fine. I think you can pass on both ends, which we did and survived. But if Mike takes that foul against Villanova for an and 1 after we've passed on that other end, we've got an even bigger problem than what we have. So really great awareness by Mike to know that we've had some contact on the other end we didn't call. We're going to see that play all the way through. That doesn't mean that if he got his head taken off or his shooting arm gets, completely hit, we're going to pass. But in that situation, I think he was able to pass and keep us from making what may be a misplay on the other end even worse.
Yeah, and I think those plays at the beginning of that sequence there, the Walkunder plays, they're very challenging, very difficult. And as Ed has taught us over the years, you almost have to referee the defender's feet and see the feet moving out towards the offensive player. Defenders have gotten very good at showing vertical. So members, look at that play and use that as really a discussion. James took us through a lot of good scenarios there, a lot of good options. And that play there could lead to great pregame dialogue with you and your crews.
You know what, Rob, just to intervene, that at the other end, the play that Mike lays off, that's a play where the offensive player is taught and coached to chase that defender down. That defender's in a place where he's not really sure, and he's going to go get him. And that, we talk about referee the defense, we still have to know what the intent is of the offensive player. That's a terrific no call, because that's exactly what he was doing there. He's trying to chase him down.
James, the next play we have here, end of game. Kansas is up by 5 with the ball. Bonus situation, both teams. And really a topic that we've talked about over the last month or so in Court Club has been embellishment. I know working the amount of games you do, I've seen an uptick in embellishment this year, as it was last year. And last year was more than the year before. And it seems like the players are always one step ahead of us. So let's look at, even on fouls, there's always an embellishment, it seems. So take us through the end of game situation here, kind of your thoughts, and then, after you look at this play, your opinion on the play itself. So let's and if we look here, we are at 63-58 with 1:17, and again, both teams in the bonus situation.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, understanding here that Villanova needs to aggressively try to get the ball, but they're not necessarily taking fouls yet. So to me, what happens on this play is we have number 2 for Villanova, who comes into and moves forward into and body bumps the Kansas player who's pretty much going east to west. The Kansas player, as you said, tosses his head backwards to make it worse. If I had this play early in the game, I'd probably still call this a foul, but I'd probably go right to the Kansas player and I would tell him, throwing your head back on this play before contact even occurs, that's going to, at some point in time in the game, probably come back to haunt you, because it makes me less likely to know when you have been fouled. And I will usually try to address the embellishment earlier in a game. Guys don't do this one time. They'll do this multiple times throughout the game. So, for me, I think this is a foul, but I think it's a foul that the offensive player, like you said, he definitely makes it look a lot worse than it is. And this is something that I would like to have earlier in the game address the embellishment, try to get that out so I don't get burned on it at the end or to get fooled on it. That's how I would handle it.
Yeah, and I think to the point for the members is knowing the situation, time, score, take foul situation, penalty situation, bonus situation, all that information helps you make a more informed decision, which is really important at the end of games. All right, this next play, James, speaking of take fouls, we go to a take foul situation. So again, we're at Kansas now, 65-60 with a minute to go. And just take us through this play. And, oftentimes we see in games where these take fouls are missed and we make them, essentially take 2 or 3 take fouls. So let's look at this one here.
Yeah, I think this one's, to start, I think one of the keys is understanding and talking to your crew at a timeout about, what is the team who's trying to get the ball back going to try to do? Because what they're trying to do at 1 minute is very different than what they're probably going to do with 8 seconds left. So here, with a 5-point lead but a minute to go, I think we talked about Villanova is probably going to legally trap first to steal the ball. And then after that, if they don't get that, they're probably going to take a foul. So what we don't want to do is potentially call a foul when they're trying to legally trap, or take a foul when they force a held ball. So if the conversation in the timeout leading up to this situation is, okay, what's our time, what's our score, what are the potential for him to trap, to force a tie-up, who has the arrow, how many timeouts the offensive team has, so we don't prematurely take a foul on a legal play, jump ball or a trap, but we know that once that sequence ends, they probably are going to take a foul, because I think we've all been in situations before where we let them slap at them a little bit, or we end up having them grab them and wrap them up, and now we got to think about a flagrant foul when if we would have just taken the first legitimate take foul. Teams have to be able to take a foul at end of games. It's part of the strategy. It's part of the way we end games. We can't automatically say, well, they're fouling on purpose. This is a flagrant foul. Every foul when they're trying to get the ball back is a foul that technically is on purpose. So we've got to get the foul when they're making a legitimate play on the ball before it becomes something more severe that we end up at the monitor. But having understood the whole sequence of the situation of the time to score, the timeouts, the held ball scenario, and where we're going to be before we get to the take foul itself.
Yeah, that's really good information, members, to have, especially, as James said, coming out of timeouts when we have stoppage of play, end of game, and we're able to collect our thoughts together as a crew. Really good time to do so. And again, just prepare yourselves for all the situations that could occur near end of game situations. So James, those are our plays for this week. Great job. Really appreciate that. I think our members are going to get a lot out of this. We haven't done this in quite some time where we've had another voice beyond Ed's, and I would say you knocked it out, and we just greatly appreciate you taking the time this week with us.
Thanks, Rob.
You're hired. Great job. Tremendous.